Have you ever found yourself comparing two data frames in Scala only to realize that you need to pinpoint the exact differences in the columns? It can be quite a challenge, right? Well, today we're going to tackle that issue head on. I totally understand how frustrating it can be when you're trying to compare data frames and all you get are entire rows instead of the specific columns that differ. You're definitely not alone in this struggle. Many developers face this issue. Here's the specific situation we're looking at. One user recently asked, "How can I compare two data frames and print only the columns that are different in Scala?" They provided two data frames, one expected and one actual, and they noticed that the names in one column were different. Sound familiar? Let's dive into this together. So, what's the issue here? The user is using the except function, which returns entire rows that differ between the two data frames. However, they want to identify which specific columns have different values. This is a common scenario when working with data frames in Scala. And stick around. By the end of this video, I'll share a neat trick that will make your data comparison tasks much easier in the future. To compare the two data frames and identify the differing columns, the user should first create a function that takes both data frames as input. This function will iterate through the columns to find discrepancies. Next, the user should implement a loop that checks each column for differences. If a difference is found, the user can store the column name and the differing values for later display. After identifying the differing columns, the user can format the output to clearly show which columns have differences and what those differences are. This can be done using a simple print statement. Finally, the user should test the function with the provided data frames to ensure it works correctly. This will help confirm that the function accurately identifies and displays the differences. Fun fact, did you know that the first data frames were introduced in R? They've come a long way since then, and now Scala has its own powerful tools for data manipulation. Now let's look at the answers provided by other users. An alternative approach provided by a user involves creating a list to store differences for each column. They suggest iterating through the columns of the first data frame, selecting each column, and using the subtract function to find differences with the second data frame. If there are any differences, they display those columns. That's all for that response. Let's see what someone else had to say. An alternative approach provided by another user involves using the Spark Extensions API for comparing data frames. They suggest using the diff function, which allows you to see the differences between data frames directly. Here's the trick I promised. Always ensure your data frames are clean and well-structured before comparison. This will save you a lot of headaches down the line. And there you have it. You should now be able to compare two data frames and print out the columns that differ. Remember, clean data is key to effective comparisons. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe for more tips and tricks.